One of these episodes is just going to be me crying for an hour. Hello, welcome back to the game room and the PlayStation Library. So, I have a lot on my plate between cheeking. These days, my plate is fairly full between collecting variants and checking guidebooks and guidebook variants and cheat codes and technically cheat code variants. It doesn't leave much time for research, and that's on me. But the nice thing about being me is that I have the absolute greatest community in the collecting world, and hobby for that matter. And when I am busy doing other things that aren't variant hunting, my fans and communities and viewers are doing it for me, whether they realize it or not. And I decided that, you know what, it's about time I give back to them. And this episode of new variants being added to site are all thanks to the fans and viewers and community of Game-Rave.com. So let's get to it. Our first newbie to the site is Skeleton Warriors. Now, if you collect long box and jewel case variants, you're like, oh yeah, I've got the long box and then two of these guys. There's a one ring and a two ring. Well, it turns out the one ring has a cousin, and that is the thick one ring. So this hub right here, this little circle, there is a thin version, which I'll throw up in the post, and then there's a thick version, which means Skeleton Warriors now has 4 total known copies. And it's insane because that led to other discoveries, which I'll get to both in this episode and a future Variant Hunter episode because they're still incoming. they're still incoming. So our next addition to site is Fade to Black. Now this one is actually pretty cool for 2 reasons. One, long box to jewel case variants. You always have that problem, which I call the EB/GameStop debacle. Now, EB and GameStop and a lot of other stores, to a degree, they would actually take the games once they're traded in and they would turn them into what we used to call gutted copies, where we'd take the disc, put it in an envelope behind the counter so it couldn't be stolen from the empty case on the wall. Now, when a customer came to buy said game, there really wasn't a 100% chance that the disc that came from that original case would be brought back together. I know just from my own experiences shopping at stores that, like, you have to kind of ask to make sure you're not getting greatest hits disc in a black label, stuff like that. In Fade to Black's case, there was the new discovery of the single ring, where it's that big fat ring around that. Now, there actually is a jewel case equivalent that has the 2-ring hub, and the 2-ring hub is strictly also in the, I shouldn't say strictly, but the 2-ring hub is in the long box. That was the original disc, and then what was more than likely happened is EA published it again in the jewel case, and then for whatever reason they needed to reprint some more, and they just happened to get the single ring. Now, what's crazy is, in trying to figure out if there was a pattern, on the inside of the double jewel case, if you look closely, it's going to show up cool. See these two little indentations right here and like right here? That's just part of the molding. And in trying to discern if the 2-ring disc came in both the long back and the jewel case, I kept spotting situations where in the auction there were no indentations. And I was like, maybe that's a way to identify if the disc is correct, if it's got the indentations or not. And it wasn't until a friend of the site pointed out that it's the same case. It just depends how it was loaded into the machine, which side you would see with the disc. So in cases like this, no pun intended, you kind of have to use the law of averages and opening sealed copies. And thankfully, we can confirm that, yes, the double jewel case is both a 2-ring and a 1-ring variant. I bring up that case example for our next one, and you know who you are, Mr. Opening Sealed Cases. It's beautiful. Chessmaster. Chessmaster is another long box that went from long box to jewel case. And on the original scans of Game-Rave.com, you've got the 2-ring in the long box and the 1-ring in the jewel case. It started finding out that there were copies of the 2-ring all over the place in the jewel case. And I was like, oh, is it a gutted copy? Like, how do we confirm this? And thankfully, at least in this particular instance, you have an inside source. And for once, it's not me. Sony used whatever cases they had on hand. Usually it was between 1 to, I think, 3 or 4 different versions. But in Chessmaster's case, especially if you're a sealed collector, there's a way to figure out if the game is the right disc in the right case. For the 2-ring jewel case version, see, 1, 2, 1, 2. The case on the inside is going to have 2 dots holding the manual in place. For the 1-ring version, it would have 2 lines instead of the 2 dots. I mean, there's a dot right there, but this is what's important. And we went through, I think, like between Macari and eBay and whatever the other site was, we kept a tally of like which disc was in which case. The discs matched the same tab of the case. So this is being added to site. And in checking up with a friend to make sure I got all my notes straight before I added them to site and, talked about them here in the video, we come down to this son of a bitch. Now, when Game-Rave first started over 20 years, Jesus God, it's almost 20 years ago, I had no idea about ring hub variants. I just thought the disc was the disc and you were good to go. Like I said, the swapping of the CDs in gutted copies didn't really register until years later. So with Agile Warrior on the site, I have this guy as a 2-ring hub in both the long box and the jewel case. And that is going to need a correction twice. So after doing a lot of research and talking with a friend, it turns out the jewel case is going to have a single ring hub where it's got the big picture in it and there's no like secondary ring going around. So on the site, I will, actually it should be done by the time this posts, I will be taking down the 2-ring jewel case image and replacing it with the 1-ring image with noting saying it was updated. And then we'll go from there. The reason I started this video saying one of these days it's just going to be me crying and getting the email confirmation from my friend about this single ring copy. I was like, you know what? Just in case, let's make sure there's no other tabs that might confirm like how Chessmaster did. And in going through all the auctions again, I found this. Yep. That is a thick 1-ring hub variant for Agile Warrior that I didn't know existed until the other day. And yes, I bought it. It's coming home. And that'll be up on site once I can confirm all the pieces are the same. Because I do have the spare wrong 2-ring one now. But yeah, the life of a variant hunter. Like I said, guys, I absolutely adore every one of you. Never, ever, ever be afraid to email or jump in the Discord and ask questions. There are never wrong questions. There are only answers that can be proven right once you've researched it for literally a month and a half, banging your head against auction pages and heading to stores. If you guys have any questions, let me know. If you are not in our Discord, I do post all the updates, be it corrections or additions, in there. And then I have been posting them to Facebook and Twitter, X or Cross, whatever Elon wants now. So always check there for site updates. As always, be safe, take care. If you guys have any questions, I'll see you in the comments section below. Take care.